So Chris, first of all, we always give one of the bits pins to all of our directors. Come on up, guys.
Come on up.
Yeah, man.
Give it up for
Chris. So Chris, that's fantastic. That's your first feature film that you've both written and directed. Can you tell us a bit about the whole process, like how you came about to, do your first feature film, how that experience was for you? And,
Gosh, I think I started on it 6 years ago. I was working on another project that was just too expensive at the time. So Glenn encouraged me to write something that was sort of lower budget and easier to do. And that was sort of the beginning, but then as I was writing it, it started to become clear that this was a story about artists dealing with depression, and I'd never seen a film where the depression sort of takes on the form of, sort of the demon of the mind. So I thought I wanted to tell a story about that.
And what was your inspiration for the film? How did you come up with the story?
Well, when I was much younger, I dealt with issues of depression myself, and often creating and writing was my sort of relief from that. So that it drew heavily upon personal experience.
Wonderful. And the animation was fantastic in it as well. What was the influence for that animation?
There's a very talented gentleman here named Sean Schofield who did all the original character drawings and landscapes, and he's an amazingly talented comic book artist.
Would you like to talk a bit about the animation and the process in creating it?
Sean?
Yeah, okay. Am I moving over here? The basic process was twofold. First was the need to actually draw the pages of the graphic novel that Leia creates. That was done first. And then afterwards it was just, we sat down and figured out what we needed for every one of the animated scenes, and all the elements were drawn separately so that the animators had the keyframe, they could put it all together. So it was just me sitting in my studio for 10 weeks drawing, which was both fun and crazy. But it turned out amazing. I was very happy with it.
Wonderful. Chris, how about you introduce everybody who's up here today?
Well, why don't we just go down the line here and just everyone say a little bit about what they did on the film.
My name is Glenn Wood. I'm the producer.
My name is David Carruthers. I'm the line producer. And right beside me, you can't see her right now, is Paula Devonshire, and she was the other half of the producing team with Paul and Glenn. So thank you, Paula.
Hi, I'm Gregor Hagee. I was the cinematographer.
I'm Sid. I do makeup.
Have any questions from the audience? Somebody's got to have a question. Right over there.
Sorry if this is kind of impersonal, but what was the budget?
It was about 1.3 million. 1.3 million.
Thank you. It looks like a lot more.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job. I was really impressed when I first saw it. I was just like, wow. Especially knowing that this was your first feature film. Like, you did such an amazing job, and you obviously had such a fantastic team working with you on this film. And you also had some pretty big names in this film too. You have like Steve Mahoney, and you have Enrico Colantoni as well. What was it like working with them?
They were all terrific to work with. They were all very experienced, and which is a little intimidating at first, but they're all very lovely to work with, and they all brought a lot to the roles they played, and they all brought lots of interesting suggestions. So it was good, and we had a very aggressive shooting schedule, and everyone was easy to work with in sync with that.
We have another question. We'll take you first, and then we'll take you.
Hey, Chris.
Hey.
Is it going to get a wider release? Are you looking to get a wider release? Like, I hope it does.
Glenn, you want to speak to
Doing
this?
well.
So our distributor in Canada is Raven Banner. They're going to do we'll see how wide, but it's going to be a theatrical release. March, April is when it's going to happen. It's we're just working out a deal with an American distributor as well, so that it can be like a continent-wide day and date release. So that's why we can't really give too much details about it right now, but look for it in March or April.
Nice.
We have another question back there.
Yeah, I'm wondering can you tell us about shooting on location? As I understand, the entire film there were no sets, it was all one location, which is a great way to create tension there. I wonder if you can speak to what it was like to shoot on location.
Well, that was my house. Well, my father's house. He's here tonight, and I want to thank both my parents for being so supportive of me throughout all of this. And my father moved out temporarily while the shoot was in.
Very supportive parents.
Yes. I wrote it with the house in mind, but once you have a whole film crew move into your house, it gets awfully small very quickly. And we were shooting at the tail end of the winter, and it was freezing outside. And we had a problem. One of the radiators on the second floor started leaking, so we had to shut down the heat in the house. And I was staying there at night, so I actually had to sleep in like sweaters and toques, and the actors would rehearse in like full parkas and gloves. So, but it was good. Like sometimes being in a real house in cramped quarters makes it difficult to get everybody into the room at the same time. But it indirectly contributes to the claustrophobia in the film.
Do you have a question?
Where did you get all the blood?
From the makeup effects people.
Is there a level of different levels of blood that film directors choose for horror films?
Oh, I mean, Sid could speak to that more than I could.
So the blood on top of the skin is usually a brighter red.
So when she was cutting herself on top, it was a brighter red, and then the older cuts were darker, and we have thin to thick and fresh scab, and we had transfers, and we moistened it up, and we let it dry out, and yeah, it was really fun. And also I wanted to say too that Chris is an amazing person, and when I first met him, I had no idea how many great friends he had, because we had the most talented crew, and it was the most favorite film that I've done in my 30 years of experience. It was the funnest show I've ever done. We had a great time. We had a great time.
We have another question back there.
I just wanted to know, hi Chris, well done by the way.
Thank you.
Are you a horror genre filmmaker, or was that just something you had in you that you wanted to let out and now you'll turn to something else?
I mean, I grew up loving horror movies. I mean, this was a more sort of hard to define film in some ways. I mean, in some ways it's a more personal film, which has some overtones of horror. Although most of the projects, my future projects that I'm developing, in fact all of them have sort of horror elements. But there's always a personal element in there as well. So, but I'm not, I don't feel like it's, I mean, horror is one of my first loves, but I'm also open to considering doing other things too. But yeah.
It was quite, I'm sure it was quite a feat to be both writing and directing your film as well. How did you find that whole process of like putting your own story onto film and going through that whole process? Did you find that it was easy to put it to film the way that you had it in your mind?
the script actually went through many drafts, as Glenn can attest. But I think the overall sort of shape of the story was always the same, and sort of the basic cast of characters was the same. There was a few things, ideas, sort of in early versions of the script that didn't make it into the final version, I think probably for the better. And one of the things I learned the value of is also getting feedback and listening to people. And it doesn't mean you have to do exactly what everyone says, but when you really trust somebody who's giving you good feedback, it's important to listen to that.
Do we have another question?
I loved your Hitchcockian cameo. So, that was great.
Thank you. I think that was DC. You suggested I walk across the bridge.
Wonderful. Do we have any other questions?
I noticed the love interest looks a lot like you, Chris.
Would you like to speak to that?
I didn't want to say that I insisted. The actor, no. Honestly, like we were looking at lots of different actors for Mark, and I think he actually didn't audition in person. He sent a tape, or he
was
did
the
it.
last person we cast. We started shooting and cast him while we were shooting. It was like so last minute.
But he was great. He was such a trooper, and he and Katie had amazing chemistry, and they really hit it off well. So that helps. But as they say, any resemblance to Pete, is purely incidental.
Do we have any other questions? Here in the back?
Yeah, I thought the character of the Dark Knight was a more villain as a monster. Seeing the cat is obviously amazing. It's great to see him as like a human. But I was wondering if you could talk about the development of that character. Like there's a bit of a Freddy vibe there sometimes almost, just with how he's like four-dimensional. How did that character come to be?
Initially, in the early draft, he was a creature. Like he was more like a Nosferatu, much more vampiric. And I can't remember, I think that may have been an element that people found just a little too hard to swallow. Because there's so many sort of ideas in this they were trying to get people to buy into. So to add another layer on top of that, like he's also this creature, that's when I sort of came up with the idea of like, what if he's sort of the spirit, like more like a vengeful spirit of what used to be like a regular person. I mean, that did cross my mind, the Freddy thing, but I tried not as much as possible to mimic that. I tried to make this its own thing, but I mean, there's lots of horror stories where vengeful spirits return in some form.
So we have time for 2 more questions. Do you have any other questions from the audience?
What's next?
I have 3 projects I'm trying to get off the ground right now. One's called Hangman. I mean, they're all feature films. One's called Hangman, which is about a bullied teenage boy who gets protection from a vigilante serial killer.
You might need more blood on that one.
Yeah. And one is called Beneath Planet Cronenberg, which is about a shy boy who becomes obsessed with a certain Canadian filmmaker.
Who would that be?
Yeah, I think there could be some autobiographical elements in that. And a new one called Hatchet Face, which is a slasher, a meta slasher script. More blood in that one as well. It keeps coming.
We have time for one last question. Go ahead.
Was the graphic novel released?
No, sadly. But Sean has all the original artwork.
Yes, we only did, about 20 pages of the actual graphic novel. That's all you ever actually see. And it was never completed. It would just take too much time.
But hey, beautiful marketing tie-in to the movie.
That was thought about.
Prince.
Prince, sure. No problem there. It's already done.
Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful. We'll just give it up for the Dark Screen.
And thank thank you to Blood in the Snow for having us here. I really appreciate this a lot. It's a great festival.